80% of B2B buyers have already chosen a vendor before they talk to sales. So,
Okay.
the concept of just because there's a first touch point with sales, that doesn't mean that they haven't been taking into consideration everything that you've been posting on your social media.
Funnel Visionaries. Funnel Visionaries.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Funnel Visionaries, the marketing podcast where we talk a whole lot of realness about perfecting the customer journey. I am, of course, your behatted host, Konrad Sanders, and today I'm joined by the brilliant Alex Noble, Head of Digital at the Bank of London. And we delve into the frustrating misperception and misappreciation of the role and function of marketing, and of course, what to do about it. So let's dive in. Alex, thanks for joining Funnel Visionaries. How are you doing today?
Yeah, very good. Thanks for having me. I'm delighted to finally get on. It's been bit of a long time coming, but yeah, very pleased to be here and finally have our chat.
I think it's going to be worth the wait, right? It's like that anticipation's been building, so it's going to be like an extra special episode because of that.
Campaign launch, as they say.
Exactly. This is going to be the one. So, we're going to dive into a bunch of questions, and but before we dive into like the serious marketing chat, we'd like to start with a bit of marketing silliness, if you will. I am going to transform into a marketing genie, and I'm going to grant you one wish today. That wish must be related to the world of marketing. So, Alex, if you could change anything about the world of marketing or marketers or anything in that realm, what would it be?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. I think most marketers would say, right, I'll have 1, 2, 3 budget, audience insights, etc. But I think from my perspective, it's looking out with the marketing community, and actually from an external perspective, my wish would be for others to be willing to lift the lid on just what being a marketer actually is, seeking to better understand the marketing audience, so to speak, their marketers, their marketing teams, people that work in marketing, and better dive into what that role actually incorporates. I think it's always seen as sometimes as a nice to have, or sort of anyone can do it. I could probably do that myself, so I don't want to invest time. So my wish would be for people to take that time to better understand the role, what it incorporates, and the purpose behind marketing, and actually what it can achieve for businesses. Because I think it's kind of painted with that kind of one brushstroke, that's kind of seen as a fairly nice to have function. I talk about it, marketing as almost being your toolkit's like the bag of Mary Poppins. You kind of put your hand in that bag and things just keep popping out. You've got content marketing, product marketing, PR, social media, performance marketing, and all these are specialities. All these are really fundamental to strategy. I'm not saying they all have to be individual roles, but each tactic has got to be executed in a specific way. And I think we are constantly painted as marketers with that marketer brush without kind of understanding the intricacies of how we operate. So my wish would be for people to dive deeper into what makes a marketer, and what we actually do on a day-to-day basis. Because I don't think they just try to understand sometimes.
It's really interesting. A couple of points there. I love the analogy. First of all, I'll get back to that, the Mary Poppins bag. I think that, like you said, most people answering this question would focus on, budget insights, and in fact, when you look at the success of marketing, most of the time we are looking at the tactics, right? We're looking at those tactics and the strategies. But there's so much more to it. There's so much more to a brand succeeding to, bring in the right leads and drive revenue through marketing. One of the key components is like internal operations and internal politics and understanding, and people within a company, the different sort of often siloed sort of divisions, really understanding each other. And I think it's like a really unique point that I don't think anyone on the podcast yet has made, that just the understanding of what a marketer is and does within an organization, I think would help facilitate better marketing and better results.
I mean, yeah, I agree. And it's not to say that, so listen, I work in a bank and compliance and regulation is super important. And I'm not to say that I know the ins and outs of that area. But what I will say is that I've got a complete respect and understanding for how important it is for our business to thrive. And I just think sometimes there might be the kind of, it's a function that might be disregarded slightly more. When really it's, and again, sorry for another analogy, but the idea of it being if you watch NFL, the quarterback is someone who takes and sort of takes in defenders and spreads the ball to different parts of his team depending on who's kind of open. And I think with the marketing, it's like, how can we take different messages that are quite complex from around the organization and empower them and kind of take them and give them a new lease of life and spray them out into our different channels, but in a really more digestible, simplified manner. So it's a great way of pushing the business externally and heroing the work that is done in each of these functions. Because I think, the best thing is to have an integrated approach where you're working with all these functions, and the respect is there because we want to spread those messages. And I just think sometimes it's perhaps not reciprocated maybe as much as it should be, but maybe I'm being biased and sensitive, but
I don't think you are. And also, Alex, you should never apologize for using analogies. This is the place for it. This is the safe space. The more analogies, the better.
You're going to regret you said that.
Yeah, please lay them on thick. Yeah, you're right. It is often like sadly seen as perhaps being like something fluffy, right? And I know there's traditionally sales and marketing kind of butt heads, and especially more, I'd say, in B2B organizations, there's it's like, as you said, it's just not often it's not as appreciated as it should be, when really, I mean, I'm biased, you are as well, obviously, but it's what fuels a company, right? In order for a company to succeed and grow, that's what companies want to do. You need leads, because leads turn into sales and sales turn into revenue. And without all of that, you don't have a company, right? And I love the fact that you're talking about this more kind of integrated approach to marketing, whereby you're not just some like side part, some wing of the business doing some fluffy things on social media. The reality is, like, good marketers should be communicating and talking to all of the different departments, all of the different internal experts, because then you can externalize it. Then you can get your messaging right. Then it's not fluffy, right? As long as you're kind of also understanding the audience, but understanding the internal audience, so to speak, as well. Then you can actually deliver really good marketing messaging and comms and strategies.
Absolutely, Konrad. And I think for me, part of the reason sometimes that it is slightly disregarded, and I'm not going to keep going on about this, but this just kind of alludes and leads to the next point, is the accessibility factor. So somebody who works in social media, well, John Smith has got Instagram, he's got LinkedIn. Someone who does manages email marketing, they know how to write emails. People search and understand the way Google works. And I think it's that kind of surface level viewpoint that it can't be that complicated, because I do it in my day-to-day life. But I think if you dive a little bit deeper, you talked there about audience understanding, and that is, for me, the pinnacle of good marketing is listening first. How do you best understand the people that you are trying to communicate to, and ultimately the people that your business is trying to benefit and serve. And I think that's just like, again, I'm just going to go back to regulation, compliance, operations, whatever function. It's your due diligence. You have to do that. And I think, just like in those areas of business, if you skip your due diligence, you're going to make mistakes. I think it's the same with audience understanding. There's a huge expectation, I think, in a lot of B2B businesses that I'd call it kind of product disillusionment, where you are involved in building this product which you have put blood, sweat, and tears into. And I don't doubt that it's great, but I don't, there is an idea sometimes that it's the best thing since sliced bread, because the internal feeling is that, so we should be talking about it. We should be talking about the features, and we should just be, people naturally will want to buy it, will want to buy the product, the service, whatever it may be. And ultimately, let's write blogs on it and talk about it, and people will come to our site, and then we'll get a lead from however whatever tactic we employ. But ultimately, we want to be listening and making sure that, one, we're speaking about the right things, because people might not even know who our brand is first. So there's an idea, why would you buy from us if you don't trust us, if we're not seen as credible within the industry? And two, for me, it's not just about asking that audience then to come to you, but actually through that listening aspect and understanding the audience better, you can go to meet them in the middle. So I've been talking a lot about sort of this idea of content placement as the digital era's PR. I heard someone mention that recently, and I loved it, because it's the idea of understanding your audience and listening. So then building content that will fit into their day-to-day behaviors. So they don't have to go and seek and understand who you are, and you're not asking for anything for them. You're trying to build content that resonates with them from a benefits and outcomes perspective, not just like this is our product, this is the features of it, because no one really cares about that. They care about how it benefits their clients, and what they want to know as well is, or what they want to do is consume it in a place where it feels natural to them. So it's about identifying, getting that right message in the right place to the right person at the right time, effectively. And you can't do that without listening and understanding your audience first. I think it's such a fundamental. If you start with a corporate arrogant monologue and just speak at people, no one's going to listen, because you haven't in the first place. If that makes sense.
It absolutely. It's about bridge. You're building a bridge, aren't you? Between, like, as you said, all those sort of product people and the features of the product. Building the bridge to the pain points, the desires, the goals, the barriers, etc. of the audience. And I'm gonna move on to the next section, but I want to add one point, which is, that very sort of internal focused. It's so common for people within a company, within a brand, to be overly focused on their products or services, and I think one of the reasons why they really struggle to actually build that bridge is because of the curse of knowledge, cognitive bias, whereby you have all that knowledge, it's good, it's great, you've built it, and like it's powerful, but it's very hard for you to put yourself in the shoes, in the mindset of your audience. And that's where good marketers come in, because if it's done properly, we talk to the audience, we get insights, we get data, and we bridge those gaps.
That's probably a better way of putting it than, as I said, product disillusionment. Whatever you said there was a lot more, I guess, I think that describes it better. But I do think the other, sorry, just to finish on this point, the other area is that we expect, as organizations, when we finally engage with someone, we rely on that to be the first touch point. When, I've seen data recently that someone on LinkedIn called David, I wrote it down actually, David Blinhoff, said that, or Blinhoff said, 80% of B2B buyers have already chosen a vendor before they talk to sales. So, the concept of just because there's a first touch point with sales, that doesn't mean that they haven't been taking into consideration everything that you've been posting on your social media, everything that you didn't think was specifically targeted to them. People do the research, and it's important to, as a result, do your research on them, and position yourself in that place that doesn't, I think, that dangerous word of assumption. Assume that people want to buy your product. give them a reason to, I guess, or multiple reasons to, that's spoken in their language and kind of not yours. So.
Yeah. And I think there's a nice segue in your answer there to something I wanted to bring up. I wanted us, because you mentioned your one wish from the marketing genie that I am, is to kind of help others have a better understanding of marketing. And I suppose within that, what we do as marketers, and the difference between like a common marketing myths and the reality of the situation, and we also talked about sales and marketing kind of butting heads. So I'm gonna throw some myths at you. And I want us to I want to bust them. I want you to bust them. I want us to talk about them. And one of them is this age old idea that marketing is sales support. I suppose we've sort of spoken to that in a way already, but and we've both kind of clearly explained that marketing is a lot more than sales support. So how would you kind of redefine it to help, internally help a company or the powers that be or the C-suite understand that marketing is not just sales support?
Yeah, I ultimately the way I would try to position it is through a use case of them being part of a a B2B sales cycle or a marketing cycle, and try and reverse engineer. And what I mean by that is understanding why you would get into their shoes. Why would you choose this partner for the business? Like, what is what are the reasons behind it? This is the first point, and basically what I'm talking about is brand. I think positioning yourself in a market differently to others when you've got very similar products, like the world of banking where we do, is so important. Because if you don't create differentiators through personality, through your positioning, through engagement, through, as we say, proactively reaching out and trying to build that bridge between people, then you're just relying on them wanting your product more than anyone else's. And if they don't know who you are and what you're about, then the chances are they're not going to choose you. And I think the other thing to think about is that brand, and that touch point and that dialogue. We're almost that hand holding partner that changes a transactional relationship into a growth partnership potential. And what do I mean by that is the first thing they hear or usually see from a brand is from us. And then as they potentially start to move through that cycle, and they start to engage through sales, should we have given them the right content and right experience? Again, it's our content that we've produced that is likely to aid sales in helping them navigate that relationship and hopefully close a deal. And again, if you've got a transactional relationship, then that's where the line is drawn in the sand and we go on to the next. But as we know, retention is one of the best routes to revenue. So then how do we then help consistently make that that person, because they are people at the end of the day, even in B2B, feel seen and heard and valued, just like we did at the start, through value-adding communication, even once they are a customer. Because I think that is the misconception: is marketing is there to deliver a lead to sales, full stop. When I actually think, and this is something we've talked about before, is the idea of, and it's difficult to do, but creating that flywheel instead of the funnel. So your traditional funnel of awareness, consideration, etc. Marketing seemed to be this kind of part at the top. But actually, if we think about it from that flywheel perspective, the flywheel is a constant engagement loop of value-adding sort of communication with your audience to make that feel like that community at the vibe, and give people that kind of extra presence or consistent presence with your brand. And that's where I think the real power of marketing lies. It can influence at each stage of that buyer journey, and it makes people feel seen and heard if done well, and make them feel important and understood at the start, and continue to do so even after they've signed that contract and become your customer. And I think that's just, I think that's where we talked about before, it kind of being a mixture between science and psychology, because ultimately, you know, those whose clients they might be customer success manager, they might be the sales, think they know, they've had the direct conversations, the one-to-ones with these people, they know, they get them. But really, we've been there every step of the way as well. It's just been slightly more in the background.
And I think we should be there every step of the way. And I think, like you said, the misconception, the myth that marketing is just sales support, or even that, as you said, marketing is just that piece at the top of the funnel we get. And by thinking that that's the case, you'd automatically think that the goal is leads there, right? Our goal is just lead count, and if
Correct. Yeah.
just in that one sort of place, and just setting their KPIs and their end goals around how many leads they can generate, I think that they're missing the bigger picture there, right? Because you can generate a whole bunch of leads that are dud leads that aren't going to convert, or are less likely to convert. Maybe when they do convert, they're not the big spenders. They're not the ones that are going to stick around. And without looking full funnel, or if we change the analogy from funnel to a flywheel, which I think is extremely valuable to do so, without looking at if marketing's not involved in that entire wheel or that entire sort of journey, then you can be missing more than a trick, and really not maximizing, your efforts. And so I usually say that at the end, really, we should be focused on revenue growth, not on lead count.
Absolutely. Yeah, precisely. And I think, just to go back, it's definitely part of marketing, definitely is to support sales. There's no doubt about that. And deliver quality leads that are nurtured. And I love that part, because it is about creating that differentiating experience to begin with that make them, ultimately a lot of the time they're choosing the brand to engage with because of the work we've done in order to get them through the front door. But I think the idea of, what mistakes we've made, right? A marketing mistake that I've seen so many times is purchasing email lists, for example. Have fun emailing into that cold environment in comparison to one that has sort of been nurtured and taken time to build and understand. And that's an example of marketing being supportive of sales. And I completely appreciate that. There's just a lot more elements of it whereby, what happens when, John Smith isn't ready to buy, which a lot of the time people aren't. Who keeps that relationship? Who keeps that fire burning, so to speak, in that relationship, until they show that intent. That's where we're the focal point. And I believe things, the role of marketing is to build credible, loyal relationships, and be that hand to hold them through a really positive journey, that always value adding, always open-ended in terms of dialogue, and effectively be there from start to finish. And even if we do finish in an amicable divorce where communication has been strong and you don't burn your bridges, I think I think it's the sole focus of it being just that kind of initial part of the journey is a misconception, is a myth.
It's wrong.
It's wrong. Yeah,
it's wrong. You've weaved in quite a few analogies there, right? I've got fire burning, hand holding, divorce.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think you raised a really important point. Many important points, but one that jumped out is the fact that you talked about the idea of a prospect not being ready to buy yet, right? And I think that for me, that's why content marketing exists. That's what, if someone was to twist my arm and say, Konrad, in one short sentence, tell me why content marketing is a thing. Why does it exist? Why is it a powerful kind of strategy? I'd say it's because most people aren't ready to buy yet. Most prospects aren't ready. So you can't propose to them on the first date, right? You're not going to have a very good success rate proposing to people on the first date. I think most companies still do try to do that. Like you mentioned before, those that are so immersed in the features of their products and services, they just assume that, you know, the target audience out there will just be just as delighted about them as they are. But if they're like problem aware and looking for solutions, you know, further up in that kind of journey, or solution aware, you know, just not in buying mode yet. If they're not in buying mode, it's going to be very, very difficult to convince and convert someone who's not in buying mode. It's like when you know, let's say pop into a shoe shop or something, you know you're going in there to browse, right? You were just walking past, salesperson comes over and they make you run out the shop because you just don't want to talk to them at that stage, because you're browsing. So yeah, I think like keeping the fire burning is crucial, and that's where content marketing comes into play. That's why it's so powerful, because if we feed, you know, valuable content that's helping them, aiding them, you're being their trusted advisor, building a relationship and nurturing a relationship with them, then, and hopefully warming them up during that process. When they are in buying mode, ideally you want it to be a no-brainer that they choose you, because you've kept that fire burning, right? You've kept that relationship going, that sort of content marketing, relationship marketing.
Absolutely. And I think there's two fundamentals for that for me. And we've discussed both of them. But firstly, the idea of educate over promote. So how can you bring value that doesn't just push your product, but actually just positions you as someone who cares about the people that they're speaking to, and with it the unbiased, selfless content, I like to call it, where you're just bringing value to them. You're just saying, listen, whoever doesn't know that much about this, we're experts in this field, and we want to give, bring you further insights, because you can't know what you don't know. So there might be people within this community, this audience network, whatever you want to call it, ecosystem, another buzzword, that don't actually realize that your solution could be for them, or that you do specific things that they want. And I think that's where you've got to speak in their language again when I talk about benefits and outcomes over features. Don't focus on the capabilities of your product. Focus on the benefits it brings to them and the outcomes it can bring to their clients. Now, again, I'm speaking more specifically to B2B, but I think it's super important. And the second one, Konrad, I'd say is not expecting them to then have to come to you to consume that content. Be smart in your content placement and try and think of places where you can position it in a way that they don't have to change their behavior. They're on, whatever publication you can partner with in order to have a piece of content placed, because the less it feels like a targeted piece of content and more like a valuable, insightful read, I'd say the better. No one likes to be advertised to, and I'm not saying it is those out there are ads, but they feel much more authentic if they don't feel like them.
Yeah, absolutely. The best advertising doesn't look like advertising, right? And so it's kind of about
that's an art. It's hard, but yeah, it is. It's definitely true, I think. I mean, I'll go into the B2C world quickly, but think about, I don't know, Nike is such an obvious one, but they don't speak about like the quality soles on their shoes, do they? They speak about like how high you can jump and how you feel. That's all great marketing and branding because they're giving you a feeling and emotional connection. I'm trying to think of a B2B example. Yonder. This is like actually that might be B2C as well, but they're effectively they're like Amex meets like something else. It's like a Monzo. It's like a super lifestyle led brand, but they're all about creating that feel. How what are the perks that we can give you to make you feel like you're smashing your life in London and all these kind of things. And it's nothing to do with, the only thing they actually talk about feature wise is what the hell AER is and how nobody understands it, but everyone buys credit cards because of the AER. So they kind of call out they've got personality. They understand their audience, and they speak to the fact that they fill in the gaps. That's, I guess, the key to any good content and thought leadership, especially. Like, where are the gaps? What can you actually bring value to, that an insight to, that might not have been talked about before? Because thought leadership is not copycat content. It's not just like, oh, our competitor's done that, so we should do that as well for SEO purposes. It's like, how do we infiltrate someone's mind and like have this like moment? And they don't have to be huge, but I'll give you an example. I've been, my title at the moment is head of digital, and I've been invited to like 10 digital transformation breakfasts in the past like 12 weeks. That have all had a very, very similar agenda, and it doesn't feel unique. It doesn't feel like you're going to really be enriched through that. And although there is a great breakfast and networking opportunities, people are busy. You need to be able to understand like that core principle, like what is that gap that they really need filled. And again, going back to it, the only way you can do that is by listening and really understanding them, and like literally just asking them.
Yeah. Buyer insights. We talked about this off camera, right?
Yeah.
The power of truly understanding your buyers by talking to them. By actually running buyer interviews and having that feedback loop, surveys, etc. To understand the gap, as you said. And I think I'm a fan of Venn diagrams. I'm like notorious in the agency of Venn diagrams, like probably a bit too much. I always think there's a Venn diagram for everything, but I think why they're great is because you're looking for sweet spots, aren't you? And we talked before about science and art, that kind of sweet spot there, where you want the creativity, but you want the frameworks and formulas. And when it comes to what we're talking about here, which is sort of creating content that, I say content, or even event marketing, same premise really, isn't it? Like trying to attract target audience with something that's actually going to grab their attention and take them into your funnel. You need to kind of understand what's going to resonate, but you also want to understand and do competitor analysis, right? And it's got to be authentic too. So for us, we've got this Venn diagram where it's there's the authenticity, there's what buyers are looking for, and there's what competitors aren't doing, and then a sweet spot there is you're going to probably do pretty well, or better than if you were just prompting ChatGPT to kind of
yeah, I completely agree. And the funny thing is, and I guess if we go back to the idea of that busting myths and misconceptions and those kind of things, I think when you look at, so competitor analysis is a great example. A lot of the time you'll hear, well, so and so are doing this, so we should do that too, because it's obviously, and the other idea is like, I saw someone the other day talking about their organization, basically saying, what we'd like you to do is do Duolingo's, what they're doing for social media, we should do that because they seem to be going viral, and look at the amount of followers they have. And that's like two misconceptions in a sentence, like the idea of like followers equal commercial success, and going viral is it is the key. But they would never say, let's get 5,000 quality followers that could really actually engage and more to the point, we've got quite a niche product set that can probably only engage a certain amount of audience. So let's try and engage them with quality content that kind of consistently posts once or twice a week on social media, that we produce, one webinar a month that's really based on quality, insight-driven content, and then we'll maybe try and re-engage them through some paid. But it's this kind of like idea that there's a silver bullet. There's and that one video will get you 100,000 followers, and suddenly the leads will be flooding in, and revenue will be going. And in actual fact, the simplified strategy of trying to make the complex simple and have, have better understanding of your audience, and producing that content that is consistent, value adding, and adheres to that brand and that trust that you've hopefully built, will be way more successful. But they're more willing to test and try the radical approach than they are to give patience to the fact that the B2B life cycle is long, and as we've talked about, not everyone is ready to buy when you want them to buy. If that was the case, the world would be a very different situation, and probably more boring. So yeah, I'd say those two things are things that I've experienced, and it's hard to justify things like building that brand awareness and taking that time to build that trust and credibility through continuous, consistent content pieces that we've thought about, and there's a reason and a purpose behind them. Because brand is quite hard to measure, and people don't want to kind of take that time to brand impact, should I say. They don't want take that time sometimes to look at it. They just want those actionable KPIs like leads.
Yeah. Or even, I mean, you mentioned leads there, but we're also talking about virality. And I suppose in many cases, it's not even leads that they're looking at. In that case, virality.
Well, no, yeah.
It's just about engagement, which is often, more of a vanity metric than it is a real KPI that demonstrates actual value. Like it comes into the mix, and obviously if you're getting a lot of engagement, then that should arguably have an effect on other metrics, unless it's the wrong kind of engagement for the wrong kind of people. But I suppose my question back to go full circle here, back to why or the fact that there's an underappreciation or a misunderstanding of what marketers do within companies, within sort of people in other departments, C-suite, for example. Why do you think they are pushing for that, like virality, for example? What draws them to it, and why is it so difficult to kind of pitch, what we know as like proper marketing, whether that's like building brand, even things like conversion rate optimization, which hardly ever gets looked at, even though I always think it's the low hanging fruit of marketing, or like thorough, robust, consistent content marketing, where you're going after your ICPs rather than like social and PR and things like that.
Because they see it, because it's accessible and it looks sexy, and it's the tip of the iceberg. It's the stuff they see on a day-to-day basis that within the consumer and retail and personal lives, that counts as success. A massive social media campaign with a bloody egg got the most likes on Instagram because it went viral, because it was a movement and it was a moment in time. But and people will remember that egg, but like that's it. It's a moment. And for me, when we're talking about these kind of things, it's because it's in front of them. It's that accessibility and the sexiness surrounding, opening that hood and seeing the kind of strategy, and the breakdown of the work that goes into making it. I think it's a lot easier to make something go viral than it is to create super targeted content that makes your audience feel like they are seen and heard, because virality a lot of the time is luck, or you can chuck 50 million at something and bring in Rihanna and Channing Tatum and Beyonce and do it on the Super Bowl. But even then, those things have had so much thought put into them. And I think the other thing, Konrad, is that what they see is the end result. So they see I was in Rome the other week and I saw the Sistine Chapel, right? And that was incredible, like to witness. But the thing that we obviously, when we had our earpieces in, they were talking about, here's a bloody tangent, sorry, but they were telling us about the work and effort and teamwork and planning, how we had to plan how that ceiling was painted. And I don't think that ever comes into consideration. I think they just see the output at the end because they're consumers. And I'll tell you a point. When I was in a previous role, I launched a series of paid performance ads on LinkedIn and Meta, and I got a message saying from a very senior person saying, "I'm really concerned. None of our ads are obviously going out. I can't see any of them." and well, no wonder if we weren't targeting him. So it's that expectation that, you know, you should see exciting things. That's what marketing is. That it's that fun, sexy thing that, you know, that you see. But I don't think there's the understanding of what comes before it, and an acceptance of, you know, this is either one, a completely different industry that is nothing to do with what we do. And as I say, comparisons are the thief of joy and all that. So, but secondly, the misconception and misunderstanding that in order to, you know, people don't become an overnight success. There is a ton of work that happens in between, and it's just like great marketing. There is so much that is done before in order to achieve it, and I think that probably is forgotten.
If I can squeeze in one last question.
Yeah, sorry, that was a long answer.
No, it's good. It's good. My question is, how would you, in that scenario where you've got someone breathing down your neck and trying to push you towards like virality and these sort of tactics which you understand are not best practice and strategic enough, how would you sort of counter that or you know, make a business case or persuade them that you shouldn't be focusing on trying to get X amount of likes on TikTok and that we should be going for this more kind of focused approach? Do you have a way of convincing internal stakeholders?
So I think there's a way that I've done it in the past, and there's a way that I'd love to do it going forward, or if I had that kind of, you know, that situation. I think both go back to the idea that marketing has to be data driven, and the idea of building a case surrounding our ICP and who our audience are, but more importantly, aligning it with other parts of the business. So when we're talking about, you know, I think if you position marketing on its own, it can often look a bit at sea, and things can kind of be disregarded as maybe not so important. But when we start to bring in the idea of, you know, this is our product roadmap, and this is our wider business objectives, and this is our commercial targets, and this is how marketing fits into that scenario, versus a completely isolated, siloed project where you're looking to, you know, hit 100,000 followers on LinkedIn. You've got it, like, I think giving them that option A and option B, and being like, well, it's going to be one or the other. This is what option A gets you: 100,000 followers and maybe a blue tick, but I can't really tell you what else. Or option B, an integrated core strategy where we're hitting or aiming to hit the business objectives that we've decided we're going to align and adhere with a product roadmap. We're going to ensure that everything is compliant to hit the regulations. I think that's a stronger way of showcasing how marketing fits into the wider business scope, and a better way to manage up. Basically, make it, simplify it. Don't go into keep it high level as well. I'd say they don't care about the depths of the performance metrics. That's for you and your person you directly report to or whatever. But tell a story that reflects the business, not just the market, the kind of marketing activation itself. Because I think you will find a lot of the time there is a massive strategy execution gap in businesses where people love to be part of the strategy but don't want to actually. The execution and the work part kind of gets disregarded. So make them feel part of that, but make it visually incorporate other parts of the business and get buy-in from get allies to showcase you're doing the right thing. And I just think that will come as a much more valuable asset to the business than trying to, you know, create a new ice bucket challenge. And I know that virality comes from really strong content as well. And I think you position it as that's a result, a potential result. You know, you don't go with the idea of building something that goes viral, but if you better understand your audience, align with other core business functions within the business, and really do something that's looking to hit and support the wider business objectives. Who knows? Let's define viral. Does that mean that everyone within our audience sees it? Does that mean that everyone within, you know, should viral be more part of, you know, within our audience, not within the whole wide world who we're not trying to serve? Yeah.
Awesome. I think really, really valuable, actually tangible advice there, you know, connecting the dots to the wider business objectives and goals, showing the contrast. Here are the two sort of directions we can take, rallying the troops, getting allies within the company to kind of present this like wider strategy that isn't just one-off piece of marketing activity. And hopefully by doing so, start to change the perception that the problem that we have of marketing,
exactly,
what you can do, and bust those myths and help do what we're there to do, which is grow the company and drive revenue, and in doing so, hopefully, like get more respect for the art and the marketing.
Well, I'll say one more thing as well. Sorry, just to finish, is that no one starts a piece of content or marketing tactic or whatever and goes, "This is going to go viral." Like that's a result, and it's a result of it being engaging, and usually with a mass market engagement. You know, for example, Curry's. I don't know if you've seen their recent social campaign, but it's genius because it's basically using their employees and letting them be themselves. And I think that was just them trying to boost their employer brand, and it's actually gone viral because people care about it and it's authentic and it's cool. But you know, that's part of a much wider campaign and project. People just see the content they consume and assume that it's isolated. So yeah, align with the wider business, showcase the business impact, and bust those misconceptions and make marketing an essential part of that business growth, and visually communicate that.
Alex, you're transforming the world of marketing here today. Is that,
I'm not sure about that.
You're doing it. You're doing it. We need to send this on to all non-marketers so they can understand and change their ways and change their perceptions.
Who knows? It might go viral.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the goal, right? Secretly.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time and wisdom, and I think we've delved into like all these different really interesting areas which aren't necessarily the typical sort of marketing areas that you delve into, like just describing the funnel. It's like all these, as we said before, there's so much to the success of marketing than just the strategies and the tactics. It's how it all works together, and how a company perceives marketing, and how marketing as a department is ingrained into the goals of the company, etc. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. No, super insightful and really interesting conversation. I think it's basically marketing internally, and how you can understand your audience and all that kind of stuff. So I find this topic fascinating. So I'm really pleased to have come on and chatted with you. It's been great to chat.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.